December 20th, 2024.
That's right.
We are here at Freedom Plaza. It's a Homeless Memorial Vigil.
Yes.
Could you tell us your name?
My name is Reginald Black.
And Reginald, is there somebody you'd like to remember this evening?
The person that I remember was named Kerr, but he passed a few vigils ago, and I think about people like that who I know, and it hits different when you actually know someone. A lot of times in the homeless community, we know faces and nicknames, and we really get to know people, as friends or colleagues or community. And then when they pass away, the rules say we can only read a person's age. So, usually when I get to the vigil, I don't even know who it is that passed till people tell me. And I've had, people I know and people I've been in the shelter with have passed away, like Kerr. Kerr passed away outside. It was disheartening, to say the least.
What can you tell us about Kerr?
He was a friend. He was a good guy, and he didn't deserve to pass away without a home. I mean, we've been working on trying to get him housed for years, and it just, for whatever reason, things didn't work out to where he could have some dignity of a home.
What do you think we need to do to put an end to people dying on the street?
Well, first, people need to be housed before they go into that needing hospice care or stuff like that. Homelessness itself, it actually ages you a certain number of years. So your health age is kind of higher than what your numeric age is. And this is why people pass away early while they're homeless, because it exacerbates any problems you may have. Even if, they're minor problems, maybe it's a sprain or you just pull a muscle or something, you still injure yourself way far beyond what a housed person would be able to. You'd be able to lay in a bed and recover, but people who are unhoused, they have to carry a lot of weight. They have to sleep in areas that aren't really meant for human habitation. Some of our shelters, they have the bunk beds. They may be too small. They may be too high. I mean, it's just, the mattress itself may be a problem. Or if you're sleeping in a cot, you don't have the proper support for your back or your arm or whatever. So you age differently as a homeless person. And so making sure that they have housing before needing acute medical care, I think, is the way to go. People need to have a place to live, and maybe their health age won't be what it is.
What do you think we need to do to get that to be the reality?
Well, first, we need to have political will to do that. We need to convince our elected officials that, if they say things like housing is a human right, then that's what they believe in. You got to hold their feet to the fire to put forth legislation, proposals, and initiatives that are based on that far as housing. I mean, this country we're in it's crazy because the capital does the most for housing supports and gets knocked for it. But even though we do so much, the problem has been sort of the cycles of homelessness have been going on for more than 40 years. And so the harm that has been done in that time, it takes longer to repair that. And we haven't even really got started actually repairing the harm. So we have to start with political will, and that doesn't just go to public officials. We got to get people who are in the real estate industry to kind of like care about this, because a lot of times they are the opposition, as you would say, to producing the housing that we need, and they'll say it's price, or they want a different type of person, or just all of these nuances that make it hard for people to live where they are. And it's not fair, really, to be more so a victim of a free market than a participant. Like with the real estate industry the way it is post, the recession, that housing market makes you a victim. I mean, you got college students living 5 and 6 to an efficiency, in some places. So we need political will, and we need it all across the board, top to bottom, public officials, business owners, and definitely, we got to convince the real estate industry that it has the biggest role to play, because it actually is that industry that produces what we need, and that's the housing.
How do you think we might go about getting that on the radar of the real estate industry, of making that case to them?
I think we have to look at innovative ways of getting stories told, and I think that we have to try to mainstream a lot of our advocacy, and put it into spheres that normally an advocate wouldn't be in, say like a movie theater, right? Like a movie or a TV show, or or a podcast, or different forms of media to try to educate and inspire people to really take action on this, because too many people turn a blind eye to it. We got to make it front and center, and we got to make it so front and center that people can't ignore it anymore.
And how are we going to then get that media coverage? Like, what do you think will get their interest in covering this story or doing the films about this?
I think the people of lived experience have to take control of that narrative themselves and really make those features and things themselves and shop them around. Hopefully some people will bite. Excuse me. So hopefully somebody will bite on that, because that is the most powerful story, one that a person can tell themselves, and we need to be able to encourage people to tell stories themselves.
You were in that film with Sheila, Street Reporter.
Yes.
Is that a kind of example of what you're talking about?
That is an example of exactly what we're talking about. That production was different, and the difference was you could mainstream that. You could put that in a movie theater, and it will get people watching it. We got to do more like that. I think we got to take a kind of like Chicago PD or Chicago Fire, or a Law and Order SVU type of thing to this. Like, we need to see the advocate glorified in a way that is consumable. So maybe we have to exaggerate a little bit, give a little high drama to it, but as long as the issue and the message is there, I think that will make a good stance. So like another good example of a form you could use was the cartoon Captain Planet. It was about climate change and how they sort of like did was they dramatized it and created a superhero who fights these villains who are representations of the factors that are creating climate change, right? You have business tycoons and scientists and people that just want to make money, and it was extreme. But we need that kind of media to advocacy and to the plight of people who are unhoused. We need that. We need some of that dramatization. Another good example of a piece of media that kind of got at this, but not fully. It more so was tied to mental health. Was The Soloist. The Soloist was very consumable, and obviously the guy experienced homelessness and had mental disorder. And you got a prominent actor in the form of Jamie Foxx to play this role, and it was consumable to a lot of people. So we got to be able to bring that consumption factor to it, and hopefully some of the bigger stars will gravitate to those roles and help us with their platforms.
We a few years back worked on one of the things we were working on was related to the history of the Community for Creative Nonviolence, and
Right.
One of the things they were able to do was get a lot of media coverage, do a lot of both, and even the film Promises to Keep, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question then is, are there ways in which advocacy can actually create the interest to kind of the actual drama of the advocacy can create that interest that then leads to potentially films and TV shows and news coverage, media coverage?
And Ken, you got to inspire some of the artists. And some of the artists, again, like I said, are people of lived experience. There are some people out here who can draw really well. There's some people who can write really well. There's some people who just had the gift of the gab. They could take on a role or take on a posture and run with it. We need to be able to identify those individuals, empower them and encourage them, and make their art sort of like the way to get them out of housing instability, and to use the media that they create to then bridge, the audiences together. And this is what I think should happen as part of a larger sort of like movement. Like the arts have to be a part of it, and the arts have to kind of like speak to what the message needs to be.
Do you think where do you think this work is going to be taking place? Like, what are the groups or the locations where people are going to be kind of coming together to create this and make this happen?
That's a very good question. I mean, we have a very progressive city here in DC. I'd love to see places like Atlanta and New York get involved. I think we have the seeds of it here in DC, being as though there are entities like Street Sense and People for Fairness Coalition that are doing all kinds of work to bring awareness to the issue, and are able sometimes to bridge that gap between, an innovative form of media and advocacy. And so, having those kinds of things kind of like partner up, I think that's what needs to happen. Now, where it should happen is right here. I mean, DC is the nation's capital and should be setting an example for the rest of the cities in the country. I mean, that's my ideal of a capital. It's supposed to do things that the rest of the country can emulate and model.
So let me ask you this: if it was you, what would it be? Art, TV, film, like that you were kind of producing and working on or participating or collaborating with?
It would be all of those things. But I'd love to see sort of like an occupational based show about an activist or an advocate dealing with homelessness specifically, and it go into that person's daily. I would like it to come from the perspective of a lived experience person, where you see like little flashbacks and stuff like that to when they were homeless and why they're going through whatever they're going through at the moment, and how that experience is helping them to combat, say, like a present day situation in their work. And definitely I'd love to see, like I said, I'd love to see a Law and Order SVU type of show about a housing instability activist or an advocate. You don't see that. You don't see activism kind of glorified like you see the police glorified, or the fire department, or I think 911 does the EMTs. So you want to do shows like that, that show the different facets of an advocate's job and what they go through day to day, dealing with people and dealing with systems that are harming people.
Are there other kind of final thoughts you'd like to leave us with this evening?
That we got to keep up the fight. It's going to be an even tougher fight for the next 4 to 5 years, being as though there are different ideals about how to solve some of this, but the solution is the same. It's housing. However a person gets there, however we need to navigate and, manipulate things, but we need to make sure that people get housed, because we don't want people dying without a home. Certainly don't want them dying on the streets and in shelters. So we need to make sure that they have a place to go.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.